And then, we had to drive home because I actually had a date the next day with my current, with my, with my spouse. But it was our first date.
Nice.
So my bandmates were like, oh, I guess we should just like sleep in then. And I was like, no, we can't. We have to drive home. I need to go on this date. So we just drove home in the middle of the night. Normally from Montreal to New Jersey, it would be like a 6 hour drive. But because of the weather, it was like a 10-hour drive. I think I got home at 7 in the morning and I woke up at like 12 noon for this date.
Aw. And
Yeah.
you telling this story around Valentine's Day too.
Oh, it is Valentine's Day. Shows how
It's
romantic we are. I don't even remember.
Welcome to the 185th episode of the Casa Inns Creation. I'm your host, Chris Deering. This is the show when review bands and public figures from the Mathcore adjacent community. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, do all the things social. Every little bit helps. And feel free to join us every Sunday and Wednesday for the live cast, where you can interact with the guests in real time in the chat. You can also subscribe to this Twitch channel for just $5 to get access to the interviews before they hit YouTube and other streaming platforms, as well as get some exclusive emotes. You can also do that for free by attaching Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. It's like taking $5 from Jeff Bezos' pocket and putting it into mine. With that out of the way, let me introduce my guest today, who dropped their new album. Oh, I forgot to ask how to pronounce the album name. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try here. Hold on. We got
Okay.
Deramar Querboror.
That was pretty close.
Pretty close. Okay. We'll get to it. But they dropped their new album back in December through Zegma Beach Records. Welcome in, Mark of Massa Nera. How's it going? Oh, Massa Nera. I'm sorry, I mispronounced that one.
Yeah, that's okay. But you corrected yourselves. That's all that matters. People still mispronounce it, misspell it, but I'm doing well. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. So how do you pronounce the album name?
Well, let me just note that I'm the only non-Spanish speaker in the band, so I myself am going to mispronounce it. But it's Deramad Querer Borrar. But like for Deramad and Borrar, since they're double R's, like you should be rolling them, but I can't do that.
Okay.
So
hey, way you sounded, it sounded good to me. So I mean,
well, that's good.
I know. I was actually going to ask about the like dual language aspect of the band or whatever. And since you brought it up, we can kind of like get it out of the way here. Some of the songs are completely in Spanish, and other ones on this album, even it's just like peppered in there, like a line or two. So like most bands pick either their first language or English, like even like abroad in like international other countries and shit. Why do the dual lingo thing here?
Well, everyone in the band, like I said before, other than me, is Latin. Alan, one of our guitarists, he's Dominican. Chris, our other guitarist, is half Dominican, half Nicaraguan, and AJ, our bassist, she is Mexican. They were all born in the U.S., but they all come from Latin families. They all grew up, speaking Spanish in the house. So I think for them, and again, I don't want to put words in their mouths, obviously, but I think for them, it's just
part of the culture.
Number one, it's part of the, exactly like how they grew up. It's important to them, it's important to them personally that they express themselves this way. And I think it's important that other Spanish speaking punk rockers like hear fellow Spanish speakers, and I also think that they just enjoy playing with language, they like it when other bands bounce back and forth between multiple languages. Like, do you know the band Shizune?
No, but that's an awesome name.
Yeah, they're a screamo band from Italy. But if I remember correctly, they have lyrics in Italian, English, and Japanese.
What? I would not have expected Japanese. Okay.
Yeah, I think the vocalist, lyricist, studied in Japan for quite a while.
Interesting.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And Chris, in particular, like that was his favorite band for a long time. So, it's just it's something that means a lot to them, and obviously because my bandmates mean a lot to me, that aspect of the band means a lot to me as well. So
it's a very interesting like aspect of you guys. So I think it's really tight. You're also mentioning to me that Massa Nera is Italian. Is that right?
Yeah, that's Italian.
Okay.
When the band formed, like I said, uh, Chris in particular, but really everyone in the band other than me, they were all really into Italian screamo. Not that I
Okay.
dislike Italian screamo, but
I didn't even
I,
know that was like a genre. So that's cool.
oh yeah, like all forms of punk, or I guess music in general, especially before the internet era, there were really interesting, like localized scenes with distinct sounds. You knew if a band was from Jersey, if they were from like the Richmond, D.C. area, if they were Japanese screamo, French screamo, Latin American, and I'm sure within Latin America you would be able to tell if a band was like Chilean or Mexican.
Right.
Now, obviously, with the internet, everything is a little bit more um, heterogeneous, But yeah, they were really into Italian screamo, and so Chris, I guess, was just like, you know, typing in words and trying to figure out stuff, and he was like, "What about Massa Nera?" So, and
Okay.
it stuck.
Yeah. What makes it like Italian screamo? Italian screamo. You're saying they all take different sounds.
Oh man, again, I'm probably not the best person in the band to ask
Okay,
this
you're
because,
like the
like,
one that wasn't super into it then.
like I said, I mean, I think it's actually I had also been listening to screamo for much longer than my bandmates had been at the time. So they were really new to the genre in general, and Italian screamo was like very captivating to them. Whereas for me, honestly, until I joined the band, I didn't even realize that there were still active screamo bands. I was like, oh yeah, screamo is something that lived its life and then died around 2010 or whatever. Um,
Oh, really? You thought it was just over? Okay.
yeah, I
You've been
had
shown wrong
totally
now.
I had totally given up too on like ever being in a screamo band or anything, even though it was my favorite type of music. So but I would say if I had to like take a stab at it, Italian screamo bands are distinguished by like the movement of just like the way their music moves in general, but I think especially the guitars.
Hmm.
There's this like ah, fluidity to everything. A lot of times they don't use much distortion, lots of clean tones, lots of interesting dynamics, lots of arpeggiation, but it's very smooth, it's very melodic. And like I said, it moves, it's constantly moving. The structures are pretty linear for the most part, um, but also short and punchy. It's not like Prague or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but again,
Interesting.
there's still room for um, emo violence esque bursts of aggression as well. So yeah,
Okay. Okay. That sounds
hmm
cool.
yeah, and I would say like Rain for anyone who's listening or watching and wants to start listening to Italian screamo, like Rain, La Quiete, um, Shizune, Onye, Stormo. Like those are all great bands to check out. And apparently, right now in Italy, so I've been told, screamo is just popping off. So there are probably countless bands coming out of the woodwork at the moment that I just am not aware of.
Okay. Real quick, I wanted to shout out. I think it's Flicks D's nuts in chat. Uh, he's a big fan of yours. And he says,
Oh,
Mark probably mispronounces his last name. It's okay after I mispronounce other things.
damn. That's really nice. I still can't believe anyone's even listened to us. So, yeah.
uh, so you've been around basically since the beginning of the band. How did everything come together?
Well, as I briefly mentioned to you before we started, before Massa Nera, there was another band. I'm not even going to name it because I bet Alan and Chris would be embarrassed if I did. Maybe not Alan, definitely Chris, though. There was another band. He was doing some stuff, and I had and still have a second band called Our Wits. So my other band and the pre-Not Massa Nera group played a show together, and after we played, Chris, who is one of Massa Nera's guitarists and does vocals. all four of us do vocals. So, um, Chris came up to me and was like, "Hey, that was really cool. Do you listen to jazz music?" Which I do. So I was like, "Oh yeah, I like jazz." And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I really like Thelonious Monk. What about Toe? The Japanese math rock band." And I was like, "Yeah, I like Toe." And I was like, "Who the fuck is this kid talking to me about jazz and Toe at this punk rock show?" Um, so we exchanged numbers, and then a few months later, I found out that they needed a drummer, and I was like, "Oh man, that's that band with that kid who likes jazz music. I bet they might be interested in doing some cool stuff." So I hit them up, auditioned, and when I auditioned, I was told that the band they were was no longer, that they were going to start new. So yeah, essentially, once I joined, it became Massa Nera.
Okay. Okay. So you have been there since the beginning then. But
Yep.
that's cool. That's cool. Um so you've always been into like weird shit then if you're like listening to Toe and stuff back then. I'm not familiar with them, but it sounds like a really wild band.
Yeah, definitely. Just beautifully done, largely instrumental, like post rock, math rock with fucking incredible drumming, incredible instrumentation across the board, but the drumming especially. But yeah, I mean, my favorite band, I guess, fittingly for a mathcore adjacent podcast, my favorite band is Dillinger.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, yeah, they've been my favorite band since I was 13. I'm
Hmm.
28 now. So yeah, for 15 years, yeah, that band completely fucking changed my perception of what music could or should be. And shortly thereafter, I got into stuff like Botch, Drowning Man, Kolesh, Converge, Newt, that fucking, are they Swedish? They were like a Swedish sludgy math core band on Hydra Head. I think Hydra Head put out their
Hmm.
stuff. Yeah, yeah, I got into bands like that, grindcore stuff like Discordance Axis, Asuk, Misery, not Misery Index. Who am I thinking of? Asuk. They have the record Misery Index. Big Destroyer, etc., etc. But because I was still so young, I was like discovering all of this other music at the same time. And where I grew up, there was no punk scene, there was no metal scene, so there was like, on one hand, there was no one to really like guide me into music, but on the other hand, there was no one to gatekeep or tell me that certain stuff wasn't cool.
Okay.
So like while I was getting into all of this like heavy shit, I was getting into post-hardcore stuff like Fugazi and At the Drive-In and Frodis and Thursday, my other favorite band. I was getting into like jazz fusion, like Mahavishnu Orchestra and fucking Return to Forever, and everything else that you could think of. And I guess on the one hand, I was really attracted to like the extremity of bands like Dillinger. And on the other hand, once I started listening to stuff like Thursday or At the Drive-In, I was really attracted to like the open-heartedness of it, the
Hmm.
vulnerability, which up until then I never realized, music could be raw like that. And screamo ended up becoming like the perfect middle ground between those two things, like a nexus where
Okay.
emotional extremity and musical extremity met.
Okay, okay. And a lot of like the stuff that you're pointing out makes sense too that they'd be influences for you because I feel like y'all kind of push the boundaries of what screamo is. So,
I'm
uh,
happy you say that. I hope we do that. Um yeah, I keep saying that we're like screamo because that's what people call us. And we love screamo, and I don't think we're not a screamo band, but at the same time, I don't think we're just a screamo band, and we're not setting out to write screamo specifically. We're just setting out to write music that interests us. And in fact, we're pretty cognizant of tropes within the genre, and we do pretty much everything in our power to avoid them at all costs. I'm sure we don't always
okay.
succeed,
No, I
but
was gonna say I heard a couple of tropes on the album, but they're like good. They're not like it's not like anything Delver says it's well or whatever. I look at it as more as like paying homage, I guess, to like your
yeah,
genre. Or whatever.
And that's the thing. Sometimes we are deliberately like paying homage, but there are things that we like when we made this record, we even had a couple of rules of like what we couldn't do. You know, if
Okay.
if a certain rhythm was played, for example, we'd be like, nope, nope, not allowed.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, yeah. Um, so I definitely don't think we're just a screamo band, and my hope is that as we continue, um, we'll continue to develop our own like unique sound until ideally it'll be its own thing. It won't be easily labeled as any one thing or another.
Hmm. Just real quick, wanted to shout out Emily.gif. Hey yo, Massa Nera gang, our wits that make us men.
Oh my
The
god.
Dillinger Escape Plan and bots are like these shots heard around the world from Matt. And the new record absolutely pushes the boundaries of screamo. Also, shout out to
Damn.
Flick for the Prime Gaming sub. Thank you. Hell yeah! So you got a couple of fans. We got some fans going on.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Um, But yeah, I would say I guess you're a screamo band like that. Like you're saying, that's like the closest thing I could say. It's kind of like calling a mathcore band mathcore. Like
Yeah,
I guess like it's just a huge umbrella. You know what I mean? Like anything really goes after that.
100%. And I think especially when you get into these like subgenres of subgenres, right? The terms are so fucking ambiguous, right? I mean, even
Mm,
even even for like bigger umbrella genres. If you look at early punk rock, right? The Ramones and the Clash, they don't really sound like each other that much. Um, I don't know. I mean, Botch, Dillinger, Drowning Man, like to me, those bands don't sound anything alike.
right,
Coalesce doesn't sound like them. Converge doesn't sound like them. And especially when you think of like post Dillinger mathcore bands, I don't know. I feel like it's the same with screamo.
right,
It's just an umbrella term that describes an ethos, I think, or like a philosophy towards music more than it does like a specific sound.
right. I would say screamo is like the atmosphere, and then the fact that there's like screaming involved, but mainly like the atmosphere of shit going on, like punk with atmosphere. I guess is a good way to say it. And like
I like that.
mathcore, it's like things that are like off time or whatever are a part of it. But like after these like conditions are met, everything is like ready. You can do whatever the fuck you want.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. I like that. I'm gonna start saying that we are punk with atmosphere rather than screamo.
uh, but yeah, you guys are definitely willing to like experiment and break out of the box and stuff. The biggest moment I had on here was shapeshift. Well, I'm sure
Oh,
like
I knew it.
you've gotten this a lot, where it just like breaks into like an almost like EDM kind of thing, and like the juxtaposition between like post hardcore screamo kind of thing going into like EDM. It's like a crazy juxtaposition. If you told me it existed, I wouldn't have believed you. But when it happened, it was fucking awesome. And you guys need to
Damn.
incorporate this a lot more. Like that's so fucking good. When that came out, I
I
was just like, holy shit.
I'm so happy that's your reaction because there are definitely a couple people who have really not liked it, which I mean, I
Oh
don't give
fuck
a
those
fuck.
people.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. And these are people who like the record as a whole, of course, and I'm very grateful. And obviously, it's good for people to have differing opinions on art. That's what
Right,
makes
right,
it
right.
interesting, you know?
You're allowed to have your
Um,
wrong opinion. Yeah.
yeah. And also like, and maybe this is obvious given like the type of music that we make and the attitude towards that we have towards it, even within this like niche world that we occupy. But we're very selfish writers, like we're just making music for ourselves. We're making music that interests us and that pushes us. And if people like it, then that's great. If they don't like it, then fuck it. We still like it. Um, but that song in particular, I'm happy you mentioned it. Um, um, it's interesting because like musically before that, techno EDM like future garage break, it's probably the heaviest song on the record. Like it's not really even screamo. It's more like we used to call it the power violence song, but it's not really power violence. It's like thrashy, kind of like metalcore, I guess. Like I don't think it's that far removed from maybe something Converge would do, even though it's not necessarily, it doesn't sound like Converge. Like I think they use different chords and everything. But and like Ben Kohler is a different drummer than I am. But I think, in terms of the attack and the ferocity of it, to me that song feels more like a real metalcore song, what I would think of as like real metalcore, than it does screamo. But even when Alan, he wrote the vast majority of that song musically. Um, Even when he showed us the guitar demo, there was like an electronic break. At the time, it was more like trance music rather than techno, but it was always there. Um, I don't know. It just made sense, and I think within the context of the record, without like explaining things too much, because like I think mystique is good, and it's good to let people form their own opinions. But it's really it's meant to be kind of like the last party before you return to the grind of work,
Oh my
like
god, that makes so much sense based on the lyrics and stuff. Okay.
and like if you listen to
Huh.
the to and if and it ends side A, right? And side A, there's this kind of like push and pull where the lyrics vacillate between these kind of like diatribes about work and feeling trapped, and these attempts to sort of claw out of it. And during side A, there are a couple moments where the lyrics very briefly strike like a somewhat defiant or optimistic tone, right?
Mm.
It happens three times, and after each instance, there's an instrumental break, and it gets longer each time. And the third time is this techno track. And after that, side B starts with like a return to work, uh, productivity pushing us forward, fast forwarding years of our lives, blah 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 blah. And after that return to work, the lyrics become like a lot more internal because the struggle has been lost, you're trapped. So yeah.
That's sick. What the fuck? That's so sick. Man,
Yeah.
one of the things that I hate about doing like the podcast is that I talk to people that have way their shit way more together artistically than I do. Like hearing like ideas like that is crazy to me. That's fucking sick. Holy shit.
Thank
Emily
you.
in chat's also getting her mind blown here. Holy shit, I never even thought of that. So yeah, fucking great shit, man. Holy shit.
Thank you. Yeah, we really, we spent a long time working on the record, and we really thought a lot about it, obviously. Although I will say, like, writing it was like very natural and intuitive. Like we wrote five or so songs musically and lyrically before we stopped and realized that like all four of us were writing about the same stuff. And then once we came to that realization, it sort of guided and shaped the rest of the writing. But even still, I'll look at the lyrics and I'll find connections between songs that I didn't notice before. So, it came from, yeah, writing intuitively, coming to a realization, creating a sort of ideological and philosophical foundation for the rest of the record. And once we did that, continuing to trust our intuition, you know, and having discussions wherever it was warranted.
Um but yeah, honestly, this is one of the coolest albums I've heard in a long. Like if you hadn't dropped it so late last year, this would have made so many more lists. Like if you should have maybe just even waited like another month or whatever and done it in January or February.
Man, I thank you. I know. It is what it is. I, uh, I don't. I'm probably to blame more than anyone for the record coming out in December because I was like nitpicking. We released with the vinyl and with the digital record, we released like a 32-page art booklet,
Sick.
and I was really like nitpicking everything. Not because the artist wasn't doing a great job. Our friend Fulhensu, he did an incredible job. It was more like I wrote the majority of the liner notes and everything that we included and stuff, and I formatted the lyrics, and I was nitpicking my own work and realizing like way too late in the game, like, oh man, I should have paid more attention to like the capitalization on this page, or like I should have done this, and then revising shit. So it's probably it's probably my fault, but Yeah, I'm just happy that people have heard it all. The response has been really, really heartwarming. So, yeah.
You just, I feel like parts of this at least are pretty groundbreaking. Like I haven't heard a lot of this type of stuff in screamo before, so I think it's
Yeah, thank you. Seriously.
um. I guess we can move on to the lyrics. I
Sure.
wanted
Yeah.
to just go over a faint goodbye. Uh, I never thought I'd see myself on the opposite end of this rope. The only thing keeping my feet off the ground is a chair that I stand on. My past is my future. Locked doors, averted glances, silence. Too scared to kick the chair. Gravity, do your worst. Show me how to become a ghost. I'm not sure I've ever read like darker lyrics than this. Like that is so fucking dark. Holy shit. Uh
Hmm.
but the album's not just about despair. I feel like it's like the reason why people get there, talking about like you were mentioning work, and like you have a song about homelessness and
Yep.
dealing with like those strains kind of leads to a faint goodbye, I guess. At least that's the way I was looking at it. Yeah, you want to just talk a little bit about like I guess you already did talk a lot about like the lyrics and stuff, but if you had anything else you wanted to say about it.
Sure. Absolutely. Uh, Damn. First, I mean, uh, I'm happy that you did your homework. Damn. Like, uh, thank you. Um, yeah, and I love those lyrics. Chris, wrote that song. Except for a couple lines. My past is my future. Locked doors, averted glances, silence. I wrote those, but based on like a prompt. Chris had written lines. I think he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure about these," and I suggested those lines in lieu of the ones that he had written. But everything else he wrote for that song. Yeah, I mean, firstly, all four of us wrote lyrics for the record, pretty much split evenly, 25% four ways. Um, and it's I feel like we poured everything that we had into the record. You know, we were all going through pretty similar things with regards to our working lives. We were all in pretty demoralizing, terrible situations, um, experiencing various degrees of strapped for cashness.
Mm,
And of course, as a result, we were all experiencing our own versions of anxiety and despair. So, like all of that came out, obviously. Um, but with that being said, uh, God, I don't know. The record is like, in a lot of ways, it's really about, I don't know, like for me at least, like the lyrics, the ideas behind the record are just as important as the music. So I feel like I could talk about this forever.
hey, go for
But
it. Go.
sure. Well, so like once we had started writing the lyrics and we realized that we were all kind of going on about similar things, I got really into the work of Mark Fisher. So he was a an English like social theorist, philosopher, etc. He wrote a book called Capitalist Realism, which essentially proposes that since the fall of the Berlin Wall, um, capitalism has essentially asserted itself not just as the dominant socioeconomic paradigm, but it's essentially asserted itself as something indistinguishable from reality, right?
Right, you
It's
can.
been,
What was it? It's you can imagine the end of the world easier than the end of capitalism. Isn't that like
yes, Zizek and Frederick Jameson. And that Mark Fisher quotes them on like the first or second page of Capitalist Realism. Yep, exactly. Exactly. I think at one point, not within the book, but afterwards, he called it like a capitalist realism, like a reality deflation device. So it's this idea that because capitalism has become so naturalized, right? We no longer think about it as one of a series of socioeconomic options. We think about it as the way things are. And as such, all of the assumptions, all of the values that come with capitalism. This idea that your value is conferred to you by your work, the idea that your purpose is to work and to earn, and this idea that earning is um, not a means to an end, but a means in and of itself, right?
Mm.
Um, all of those things just become part of the fabric of reality. Um, but Mark Fisher also wrote about this idea called like hauntology. Um, I think Jacques Derrida, I'm butchering his name. He coined the term in his book Spectres of Marx. And basically, God, I'm going to be butchering this. So if there are any like philosophy majors watching me, like I apologize. Um, but essentially, his idea was that, you know, uh, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Francis Fukuyama said that capitalism had established itself as like the end of history. We were at the end of history. And Jacques Derrida uh, was arguing that, nothing really ends, right? And despite ostensibly being defeated, um, the idea of communism, the idea of socialism will continue to um, haunt people in various different ways. It was, the idea has like an atemporal dimension that continues onward, you know. So Mark Fisher and Simon Reynolds, the British music journalist, took that term and applied it to a strain of British electronica that was being made in like the 2000s by artists like the Focus Group and the Advisory Council and the Caretaker. Um,
I love
and
those names. Those are such good band names. Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah, great music as well, honestly. So and like what these artists were doing is, I think they existed at a time where like you started to hear a lot of retro music become popular, right? Music that, but as Mark Fisher would write, this was music that wasn't even classifying itself as retro. It was calling itself new, but sonically it was a complete throwback, right?
Mm.
What these artists were doing instead was they were like essentially trying to locate the lost future contained within the past, right? They were looking back towards their childhoods, again, pre Thatcher, social democracy, era of England. They were looking back towards that time and like extracting the feeling and ideas and sounds of that time, but like fucking with it,
Mm.
kind of like resurrecting the ghosts of their past and like creating something new and eerie out of it. So, I think that distinguishes it from like simple nostalgia where you're taking like an uncritical look at the past, like, oh, wasn't that great? It's more like, what did we think was going to happen? Why didn't it happen? And how can we interrogate that in order to potentially create a new future?
That's tight. I like.
Yeah. So like I got really into those ideas and then I ceaselessly talked about them with my bandmates. Chris got really into them as well. We started working with our artist, Fulgencio Bermejo, creating the art booklet and the cover. And from there, those ideas began to inform the lyrical side of the record as well. But at the same time, we wanted to, we actually had discussions about it, like the tenor of the lyrics, I guess you could say.
Mm.
And like we didn't want it to feel didactic, you know. Um, Not to throw shade at anyone because like obviously
I'm
like
sorry. I'm not really sure. What does didactic mean?
like we didn't want it to sound like we didn't want the lyrics to sound like a lesson. We didn't want it to sound like
Okay.
we're teaching people about these ideas.
Gotcha.
Like in screamo, not all screamo, but in some strains of screamo, um, I feel like there's this trend of basically just like regurgitating someone's ideas in lyrical form. Like, oh, this record is about Theodore Adorno's theory of blah 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 blah, and that's cool and all, but we've never been particularly fond of that. You know,
Mm.
um, we were a lot more interested in taking these ideas and using them as a lens through which we could examine our own lives, and then just relaying those experiences.
Right.
So if you know where we're coming from and you've read those works, then maybe like you could appreciate the lyrics more, or maybe you could critique them more, and you'll find that we actually don't know what we're talking about, or whatever. But at the same time, if someone's never read any philosophy whatsoever, hopefully they could still come to the lyrics and understand what we're talking about. Because again, we tried to be as like direct and personal as possible. That
Right.
to us was a lot more interesting and a lot scarier than just trying to set these like philosophical ideas to music.
Well, it's a more I guess welcoming than like coming into like what might be like a hard like philosophical conversation, if that makes sense. I don't know, talking to people like you're like they're a human instead of like, that they've read all these old
Yeah,
textbooks or whatever.
exactly. And I mean, it even went to the point where like when I wrote all of my lyrics for the record, I used to write almost exclusively in the second person. It was always you, right? So again, along the lines of trying to make the lyrics as direct as possible, I changed them all to the first person because I realized I was using the word you kind of like as a defense mechanism to try to distance myself from what I was writing about. And I realized, no, I don't want to do that. Actually, I need to really dig into it and confront these things because it was my life. Um, so yeah. Um, but again, the record isn't just about uh, capitalist realism or work. Um, you know, within side A, um, that certainly constitutes a lot of the lyrics. But again, um, I think Hippocrita, Alan's talking a lot about like poverty and specifically people who, again, equate one's worth as a human with their bank account.
Mm.
This idea, kind of similar to like the song about homelessness, Eyeless Faces. This idea that when people are like financially or economically destitute, when they're without resources, when they're without a home, we deny them their humanity, you know, such that like I mean, how many people walk past homeless people on the street without even looking them in the eye, you know?
Right.
Um, so you know, and Shapeshift, uh, AJ wrote those lyrics, and it's about like um, heteronormativity and the artificiality of environments in general. As those environments pertain to like our innate humanness. It's basically like an anti uh, biological essentialism song. You know,
Okay. I
yeah,
didn't
this
pick up
idea that
on
like
that, but I guess I should have read a little bit harder.
no, 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 no. But
That's cool.
I mean, but like, yeah. But I think the good thing about the lyrics again is that like there is like to a degree like an openness to them where people hopefully can like read into them to a degree, but also I like to think we wrote directly enough that people will be able to take sort of what we want them to take from them at the same time. And then yeah, side B gets a lot more internal. I was actually looking at my and I'm gonna stop rambling after this, but I was we're in the process of actually working on an article about the meanings of the songs or whatever, which like I hate phrasing it like that because you know besides the fact that like uh no art has like a fixed meaning, right?
Right,
It's
right,
all
and
based on
then you're like giving it a fixed meaning by like writing out.
exactly, and it's just so reductive because I mean, like even within a song, like I don't know, like song four, Adrift, right? That song is, you know, largely about work, but there might be a couple lines that don't fit neatly into that. Like a tangent here or a tangent there, or there's a specific word that like connects to another song. So like to just say, oh, this is about work. It's so reductive. It's so limiting.
Hmm.
And then you limit how other people view the song. And they say, oh, that's the song about work. So, you know, and obviously that's not even getting into stuff like subtext, right? Like what's the emotion behind the song? Are you despondent? Are you defiant? Are you pissed? Like what's going on? So yeah, with that being said, I realized while I was working on that article that really, I think more than anything, for me at least, the record is about um, the fear of regret, the fear of having regrets, the fear of um, making promises to yourself that you can't keep. And you're railing against these structures that are preventing you from upholding those promises to yourself. And you're aware of it, right? You have this like intense um, awareness and knowledge of those things, and you recognize that they aren't natural, they are artificial. But that knowledge doesn't help you break free. If anything, it almost imprisons you more because it just makes everything hurt more, right? Because you
Mm.
can't just accept it blindly. And so, yeah, for me, the record is about like fearing the fear of regret. And I guess for me, at least, the lyrics that I wrote, kind of like imagining, or not really even imagining, but just grappling with the uh, the knowledge that that fear at one point became a reality, and those regrets that I was trying to avoid uh, became very, very real. So
So
yeah,
what are the promises that you regret breaking then, like in the record?
well, um, at the time when I was writing it, um, when I was writing the songs that I wrote the lyrics for songs 1, 3, 4, and 10. So an endless cycle, lost faces, adrift, and wanting. Which Kid Ed is to want. So um, um, I think I felt like I was making a real effort to I would um so like I grew up in a really like conservative, really closed-minded town, like many people who get into weirdo music, right?
No.
There was one way to do things, and that was it. My family weren't totally like that per se, but they themselves had like very definitive, very narrow ideas concerning like how you ought to live, you know?
Right.
And even though I knew from a very early age that it those things really didn't work for me, um, I knew that I wanted to break away from that. Knowing that you want to do something can be a lot easier than actually doing it, right? Especially when you find yourself settling into a routine without even realizing it. I went to undergrad, I majored in psychology, I got a job, I went to grad school. I felt like I was on this path. And even though I was telling myself I was breaking away, in actuality, I really wasn't doing that at all. So at some point, during the early stages of the writing process, um, I found myself in a couple situations where um, I really made an effort to kind of like put myself out there, you know, and like actually make definitive steps towards carving my own path. And I remember a specific moment where I was on my way back home on a bus, and I said, "Okay, like keep doing this." And I actually wrote the lyrics that open. Um, they don't open the record, but they open like on the first song, "An Endless Cycle." There's that intro, and AJ wrote those lyrics. The distance between where I am and want to be and where I want to be is always the same. Blah 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 blah. And then on like the liner notes, there's an ellipse. The song gets really heavy, and then it goes into that section. From the burial plot in the garden underneath the ashen oak. I wrote those words 3 years before the song was even finished. And it was all about um, trying to. It was basically my attempt to like remind myself of that promise, and then like shortly thereafter, I got a job working at a community mental health center, and I started working, like steadily. And I finished grad school, and I started making plans to like save money so that I can move out and maybe buy a house, which is a joke. Living in New Jersey, working in mental health, that never would have been possible anyway. And like slowly but surely, I kind of started falling back into this like routine and getting further and further away from the things that I really love, which are, music, um, my friends, um, leftist politics, obviously, like all of those things. And throughout the entirety of the record writing process, or like the majority of it, because again, this record's been in the works for a really long time. Um, I think I was and my bandmates were all dealing with, our own versions of like that problem. And then, for me at least, I ended up breaking out of it when I got fired. And I got fired for trying to start a union. So
Oh shit.
yeah, yeah. So really, I
Practicing what
broke
you
out.
preach. I like it.
Yeah, I really broke out of it when I tried to start the union. I guess that was me saying, you know what, fuck this, fuck the way things are, no more. I'm not just gonna like talk the talk. I'm gonna actually go for it. And then when I got fired, I realized, I don't know. I realized that I didn't feel bad, and in fact, I actually felt like liberated. And I felt like I could put my shoulders down for the first time in 3 years.
Right.
So yeah, so the record is, um, again, like literally textually, it's dealing with work and mental health and, the artificiality of our environments and all of those things. But subtextually, I think it's really about regret and the fear of regret and what happens when your regrets catch up to you and they become all you know.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess there's an untold story because you're still like living trying to avoid your regrets or whatever, and you haven't gotten to the point where you have regrets. Well, imagine everybody has regrets, but to like the bigger overall like picture that you're painting or whatever, you don't have like regrets yet because you're like taking the path where you find the most meaning in life.
I hope so. It's funny. I'm uh, talking about regret so much and all those things. We did this interview with this Japanese blog, Long Arms, Long Legs. And the person was like, these lyrics are so weary and whatnot. Are all of you like in your 30s? And, and I was like, no, we're all like in our well, now late 20s. But when we
Right.
wrote the record, three of us were in our mid 20s. I was like, we've all just aged prematurely.
Right. When you realize you're in a capitalist hellscape, like everything, you age, you lose a couple of years.
Exactly, exactly. And I feel like if nothing else, COVID made us all extremely acutely aware, more than we already were, that we are in a deathless capitalist hellscape.
No, yeah, that's when I ended up leaving my job too. We went back to work in like fuck June because I'm in Texas. They didn't say shit didn't stay locked down. But yeah, it was like in September. I was like, man, I really want to give the podcast a go and like the sound and its creation and that. And I was just like, fuck it, like I'm done with the job. You know what I mean? I like every day just pissed me off more and more until I like left. And I mean, it's been going pretty good so far. So I don't say everybody should go quit their job, but like you know, find ways to I guess liberate yourself.
100%, 100%. And I'm really happy to hear that. So yeah, so your experience definitely mirrors the um experience that the four of us had while we were making this record.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the lyrics. I am afraid to say anymore. I don't want to. You probably don't want this podcast to be like 4 hours long. So
I've been enjoying. I do want to shout out Sleepy Fresh. Yo, Mark, it's Edgar. Massa Nera is amazing. Don't sleep
oh
on him,
fuck,
people. I was wondering if you were even gonna know who this guy was. Okay.
Edgar. Of course I know. I gotta respond to your text, Edgar. Fuck. Yeah, Edgar. Unless I'm committing a major faux pas right now, and this is another Edgar who I don't know. If it's the Edgar I think it is, Edgar. For anyone else listening or for anyone else watching this in the future, plays drums in an amazing screamo hardcore punk band from Los Angeles called Quiet Fear.
Hmm. Alrighty.
Yeah, amongst other projects, Edgar's very versatile, but we toured with Quiet Fear back in August 2022, so last August as of recording, and it was a fucking incredible experience. And for me personally, it was a treat watching Edgar drum every night because he fucking smokes. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. Uh, so this was recorded at Permanent Hearing Damage in Philly, which is probably the best name for a recording studio I've ever heard. It's so good. And then it was
Hmm.
mastered at Staff Mastering in Chicago. So, what
Yeah.
was the process like recording all of this? You said it took a long time to get together. Did you record it all like in studio, or were you all recording it like at the house, or how's it work?
Um, so we recorded in studio. Like I said, the writing process took a it took a long time, but it didn't. You know, ideas were being generated as far back as like December 2017. Um, the band was in a state of turmoil for a long time.
Uh oh.
We wrote our first two EPs, a split and a full length within a year of forming. And then after that, we lost our bassist, we lost our original singer. Alan, Chris, and I decided to do vocals. We got a bassist, lost that bassist, got another bassist, lost that one. Finally, AJ joined the band. Then it was like, oh, we're going to go to Asia. So we need to get you ready for that tour. And then it was like, oh, we need to find a practice space. So, for 2 years, um, you know, we were writing and we had a lot of ideas, but like the album itself wasn't really taking shape at all. And a lot of the ideas that we had were really not developed. And actually, it wasn't until the pandemic struck where we were really able to sit down with everything we had, hunker down, and commit ourselves to it. So, in some ways, the record was really written over the span of a year, but in other ways, it was actually written over the span of 3 to 4 years.
Jeez.
Um, so, um, once we had it how we wanted it, meaning once the songs were essentially done and once we had figured out the track list, we demoed everything. Sent all the stuff to Steve Roche, who runs Permanent Hearing Damage. He is Permanent Hearing Damage's sole proprietor and employee, and he is incredible. For anyone who doesn't know Steve, he is currently drumming in Seisha. He played bass for Seisha when Seisha was initially active,
That's
played
sick.
drums for a band called Off Minor, has drummed for countless bands like Boer War, War Emblem, Ordinary Lives, Amateur Party, way more. I'm definitely forgetting some. Um, yeah, just an extremely talented musician, extremely talented engineer, um, and producer, I think. Yeah, we sent him demos of the whole record in the sequence that it's in, except for one song that we put in another spot. Um, because again, the lyrics have like a trajectory to them. So it was important to us that we know going into the record, going into recording rather, like where everything fell. Um, Steve listened to the demos, sent us back notes, kind of started developing a game plan for how he wanted to do things. And then after that, we set a date and we spent the next 3 months just practicing and practicing and practicing. And then when we got to the studio, we recorded all of the instruments in a day and a half and we did it live on the floor.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Everything is actually all of our records have been recorded live. Um, but they were a lot more bumpy. This one went extremely smoothly. We actually recorded an additional song too that's going to be on a compilation. So yeah, 13 songs in 1.5 days.
That's crazy. Holy shit.
Yeah, it was really amazing, honestly. Like you never know how things are going to go when you're about to record, even if you feel comfortable with the songs. Um, Maybe you'll get there and you'll realize you don't like the songs as much as you thought. Maybe you'll get there and you'll realize you don't know how to play them as well as you thought, or whatever. Maybe you'll get there and you'll get a cold and it'll fuck everything up, right? There's so many things that could happen. Um,
Did anything go wrong this time?
Um, the only thing that went wrong for me was Steve has this amazing dog called Fen, and we all love Fen dearly, but I'm allergic to dogs.
Oh,
Um, so, Steve brought the dog to the studio just once so that we could say hi, and that like fucked me up just enough that I couldn't do vocals while we were
oh
there.
shit.
Yeah. Like it didn't impact my drumming at all, you know? Um, but in fact, like that's the best drumming I've ever done on record. I'm super proud of my performance. With a couple exceptions, but like that's inevitable. You're always going to hear things that you could have done better or differently or whatever, given the constraints that you have, unless you have like an unlimited amount of time in the studio. You like your fucking Axl Rose or whatever, and you could tweak things for a decade and a half. But yeah, but I couldn't do vocals. And I'm not the most confident vocalist on the best of days. So, you know, it was pretty fucking nerve wracking. And I was like, oh my God, my bandmates are going to sound so good. And I'm going to sound like fucking dog shit. Um,
So what y'all
but
end up
then,
doing? Just recording them on a different day, or?
well, we ended up, so like I said, we recorded the instruments day and a half live on the floor. Boom. No click track or anything, just going for it. Then, during the initial 40s that we were recording, in addition to doing vocals, we spent some time doing overdubs. There are like literally a handful of guitar overdubs, if that, on the record. We didn't like double layer anything or whatever. It's just what we recorded is what there is for the most part. Um, but there are a couple overdubs, a couple punch-ins. Um, After that, though, we pretty much did the rest of the vocal tracking. So anything that the four of us couldn't get to while we were at Steve's, we recorded in our practice space, actually. And
Okay.
AJ engineered all of it. And that ended up taking like probably about 6 months, but it wasn't all
Jesus
we were doing.
Christ.
Yeah. So what we would do is, Steve would send us a bounce. We would listen to it, and then while we were listening to it, we'd say, okay, like who wants to do vocals? What are they going to do? I already knew that I was going to do the bulk of my vocals because I didn't like most of the takes that I did at Steve's because of my allergies. What I didn't realize was everyone else was going to say, hey, you know what? I want to redo this too. I want to redo this. So we all ended up redoing a good amount of our vocals, some more than others, me most of all. And while we were doing that, we started to add even more vocals. Like, oh, you know what would be sick? If you doubled me there. Or what if you responded here? And, the vocal arrangements were already pretty elaborate. So they became even more elaborate. And then we would send that back to Steve along with mix notes, and he'd send a bounce back. And that just kept going on and on and on. But it was honestly for the best because I feel like through that protracted give and take, through that protracted dialogue, all five of us, the four of us in Massa Nera and Steve, we were all able to hone in on the specific sound that we wanted, something that was like polished enough that you could hear the intricacies because, we really sweat the details when it comes to arranging and we want those details to be heard, but at the same time, raw enough that it feels visceral and impactful and it feels like something that was recorded live, which it was. So yeah, it ended up being for the best. Um, yeah, and Steve is incredible. You know, he is really good about like stepping out of the way if you go into something knowing what you want to do, which we did. Like I said, not only was the record already sequenced by the time we got into the studio, we even knew where all of the overdubs were going to be, like field recordings, loops, guitar tracks, cello, violin. Like we had already planned it out. We'd already written everything. The loops or like the field recordings that are on the record, we had already recorded them and mixed them ourselves. Like, it was all ready to go. Um, so, like given that, um, Steve didn't really do much producing on that front. But at the same time, he is an expert at um, letting you know when to keep going, letting you know when you should probably take a break. Um, so, he's not afraid to say, you know what, I think you could do that better. But at the same time, he'll be the first person to say, you know what, your voice is sounding a little weak there. Maybe you should drink some tea. Maybe someone else should pop in. You know, maybe it wouldn't be beneficial for us to keep spending time on this. And he
Right.
did the same thing with the mix. He let us know when he thought that we were going to start undoing things that were good about the record if we kept working on it. So, yeah.
Well, hell yeah, that's the kind of like person that you need to work with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I we all love Steve dearly as a person and as a uh collaborator. And I can't wait until we get to record with him again.
Hell yeah.
Um and then after that, Carl, with mastering. Carl has a long working relationship with Steve. So, everything other than our first EP has been mastered by Carl, and he does amazing work. All he does, if I'm not mistaken, is mastering. Like that's his profession. He masters records and he cuts lacquers for vinyl, and that's it. And with good reason. He is great and very affordable too, given the quality of his work. And if you look on his website, he's mastered like all sorts of records. He's done shit like Pygmy Lush and Us and other hardcore bands, but he's done like spoken word releases and minimalist releases and jazz records and all these things. So he's fucking great.
Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that you guys were recording stuff like live on the floor. It doesn't sound like that on the record to me, at least. It sounds more like I don't know, like you were struggling about like how where things should be placed, or I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it still sounds like super organic and stuff. Yeah, when you said it was all recorded live, it's like that's crazy. Man. I don't know how you.
Damn, thank you. Yeah, like I said, we practiced it so much. Like we would get to practice and we would play the record front to back without stopping like 3 times in a row. And we would do
Nice.
that every fucking week. And we would stop whenever one of us like messed up, we would stop and we would just like shed that part until we felt comfortable.
Hmm.
And I'm sure we were all practicing on our own time as well. Like I definitely was. I know the others were. Um, yeah, we were super prepared. It's funny actually. The one thing we didn't do before we recorded the record, we never bothered to play it while doing vocals. So we wrote these,
Really?
yes. So we wrote these instrumental parts, and then for us, like the vocal rhythms are just as important, right? And we all listen to like a wide variety of music, like everything from like extreme metal to like hip hop and soul and alternative music and whatever, right? Like we're all pulling from a lot of different like musical idioms. And so for us, it was important that like it was important that the vocals didn't just follow what we were doing rhythmically. Like they should have their own rhythm and there should be counterpoint in the vocals and all of these things. And it
Right.
should be interesting and it should change from song to song. Um, so we wrote these like very elaborate vocal rhythms and we wrote these musical parts and we never bothered to figure out whether like they gelled, you know? And then um November, I guess October 2021, after we had recorded the record, um we were finally geared up to play our first live show since the onset of the pandemic. So we get to the practice studio and we're like, okay, time to do it, time to play the songs. And we started playing and we were like, oh my God, we can't do the vocals. So we essentially had to relearn the entire record.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and learn how to do both things at once because like for certain parts, the vocal rhythms and the musical rhythms were so different, it didn't feel natural doing both. But it honestly ended up being the best thing because I feel like all of us ended up developing this like crazy instrumental vocal independence that I imagine is going to be really helpful as we start writing new music, you know?
Well, how did that show go? If like y'all couldn't do like the vocals at the
Oh,
same time.
it went great. We practiced relentlessly until we could do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You just struggled through it. Okay.
Yep, we struggled through it, and after honestly after a few practices, like it was fine. It was just a matter of slowing things down and really feeling the rhythms again until
Right.
they became comfortable and then speeding them back up.
Hell yeah. So you have cover art done by Miles Carr, Fulgencio P. Berme. I'm not even trying.
Yeah,
Oh,
Fulgencio Bermejo.
okay, okay. So what are we looking at exactly? With I have the album art up on stream now. You're not able to see it, but yeah. What are we looking at?
Okay, so for the cover art, we wanted to take a multimedia approach, right?
Okay, like a
And
collage
so
kind of thing.
kind of like a collage, exactly. Um, but not so much a collage, so much as like three distinct layers, right? Um, so for anyone looking at the cover art right now, you'll notice. Um, and by the way, the cover, if you have like the digital version that's on Bandcamp, or if you have the vinyl, like the actual jacket, um, the cover online is actually only half of the art because the front and the back
Oh.
cover are a continuous piece.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I just took
Hmm.
it from your Bandcamp.
Yeah, no, I just, man, I hate like that on streaming and on Bandcamp. You have to make everything a fucking square. It's
Mm.
just so. Um, as a matter of fact, when we were initially thinking of like the packaging for the vinyl version, what we wanted to do was make it almost like a book where we had the front cover and the back cover and they folded open and then we had the art booklet stapled into it, so it would all be like a
Oh.
continuous piece. Yeah, but no one wanted to make that for us unless we paid them like $8,000, which we don't have. So we're like, well, maybe in the future we could do that,
Right,
maybe.
right. Put that on the back burner.
Yeah, so we compromised, but anyway, with all that being said, so there are, like I said, three distinct layers. There is a background layer, kind of like a grayish industrial background layer. Um, that was designed by Fulgencio, who, in addition to that, designed basically everything else. The center labels on the vinyl, the art booklet that came with the vinyl and the digital version, the second art booklet, which came with the cassette version of the record, which is completely different from the other booklet. Different
Oh.
cover, different back cover, different layout. He designed like the CD, the J card that comes with the cassette. There's like an inner artwork piece that's different from each edition of the record. We wanted to be distinct, so like they all have different art.
That's
Um,
crazy. Dude, that'd be so expensive. Oh my god. You must have paid this guy like thousands.
we definitely compensated him well. Yes. Um, but the good thing is we have like an ongoing relationship with him.
Right,
So
right.
he didn't charge us as much as he could have or should have. Um, um, yes. He also designed most of our shirts too. So,
Okay.
but yeah, um, like I said, he designed, with regards to the covers, specifically the background layer, which is this kind of like, it's like this sort of I don't know, like ill-defined industrial churn. You know what I mean? It's like this in kind of like crushed industrial hellscape, I guess. You know,
Mm.
no object is really distinct. I couldn't tell you specifically like what's there. To me, it just feels like some sort of
Like
um
factory or something.
not yeah, kind of like imagine like a factory sucked into a black hole, and what you're left with is just like massive, undifferentiated factory parts just strewn about, you
Mm.
know,
Okay.
all like mangled together and everything. So he designed that. again on the cover, because it's the background layer, it's not totally visible. But if you have the on the CD version, that's like the back cover, and we decided to make that layer like unobstructed for that. Um, so yeah, then I think if this is the front cover on like the top right corner, if you're looking at the screen, there are three cyanotype images,
Mm-hmm.
and those are of an apartment building in Newark, New Jersey. Um, None of us are from Newark, but we all live around Newark. Chris used to drive by that apartment building every day when he was working in Jersey City. And as someone who lives in Jersey City currently, I drive past it when I'm going to visit my parents or when I'm going to visit Chris or Alan, actually, because they live further south than I do. So Chris told me that he wanted to take pictures of that building and turn them into cyanotype images.
What is
So we went.
cyanotype?
Oh God. I like it's. Oh God. I'm not the person to be. I'm not the visual artist, obviously. Chris is like an amazing visual artist. He does research on all of these things, so he would be able to tell you.
Okay.
Um,
Because I
it's
can like
based.
kind of see the building now that I know what it is, but like,
Mhm. Cyanotype basically like he took photos and he printed them out, and then he used this like solution. I think it's like a cyanotype solution to dye the images essentially, kind of
okay.
like a bluish color. And then he made multiple versions of them in different colors, right? He sent those to me, and I made different blends on Photoshop. So if you look at those three images, the first one is pretty straightforward, and then the two subsequent images are like more distorted,
Okay.
you know? And that's because each of those is like a more chaotic blend than the last. So the first one is just like the image that Chris sent, no manipulation at all. The second one might have like five versions mushed together. And the third is a blend of like, I don't even know, 11 or 12
Hmm.
just fucked with. Um, and the back cover on the bottom left corner has a similar thing going on, but instead of that apartment building, it's a refinery located in Linden/Elizabeth, New Jersey.
I kind of thought these were people. I didn't think they were
Ah,
apartment
interesting.
buildings. Okay.
Damn, now I'm kind of disappointed I said anything. That's interesting. um, and then the topmost layer is by Miles Carr, brilliant artist, tattoo artist as well, based in Brooklyn, I believe. He actually used to play in a screamo band called I Am the Resurrection,
Hmm.
who did a split with Off Minor um, back in like 2000 or 2001. Um, yeah, Miles did the art for our previous release, which was a split album with Infant Island, Frail Body, and Diana Kralls.
Crazy,
So
crazy
yeah,
release.
yeah. So we knew that we wanted to go with him again. And Chris and I sent him. Oh my God, we tortured this man. I feel bad actually. We would send him like paragraphs of explanation, like, hey, we're really thinking. Basically, the idea is we wanted it to be like organic, inorganic matter, right?
Okay.
Miles is amazing when it comes to creating these like very strange, unique, like organic type images, right? Um, so we thought it would be interesting if he applied that sensibility to a brutalist structure.
Hmm.
And we chose brutalism specifically because brutalism is associated with like socialist architecture, democratic socialism. I think brutalism specifically emerged in the United Kingdom post World War II during its like social democratic era
Hmm.
before being adopted around the world, but especially in like socialist countries. Um, Given the themes of capitalist realism and hauntology, we were really interested in brutalism and we wanted to evoke that on the record.
Okay.
Um, but we were sending Miles like images, not just of brutalist buildings, but we were sending him like Japanese brutalism. I think it's called metabalism. Um, spelt like metabolism, but not pronounced that way. We were sending him at one point like the work of this post-socialist realist artist called Neo Rausch, whose work I discovered on some gigantic blog post about hauntology. Um, and yeah, just bombarding him with just ideas and images. And it was definitely challenging for everyone involved, but I think he did an incredible job, and yeah, I love it. I love the cover.
So
So
is it like actual art, or like did he draw it himself, or is it like just a compilation of images, or
no, it's him. It's all him.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know how you even like come up with the idea for that.
Neither neither do I.
It's
I
so
wish
chaotic and insane.
I wish my mind worked like that. That I could conceive of an image like that and then
Right.
execute it, but it does not. Yeah, it's it's incredible. And like I said, all of these elements continue to the back cover, such that the front and the back are just one continuous work of art
That's sick.
with uh with no text or anything.
Y'all should
We
sell
wanted
like tapestries with all the art on it. That'd be fucking
uh
fire.
that, you know what, that's a good idea actually. And you of course will get a cut of
Oh yeah,
everything that
yeah,
we
yeah, yeah. I
sell.
mean, I'm the idea guy.
Exactly. Yep. Um, with the vinyl version though, we did include like an OBI strip that has the band name and the album name.
Okay.
Um, yeah, kind of like for anyone who doesn't know what an OBI strip is, and apologies if everyone does, and I'm just being like a presumptuous asshole,
No,
but
I
I
think I
didn't
know
know
what
what
it
it.
means, but I'm not 100% sure. So go on ahead.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever seen Japanese CD releases of records? You know that like it's kind of like a column that might be included near the spine of the CD case.
Right. Didn't they used to do that a lot back in the day, saying like for fans of, and then list a bunch of like fucking bands or whatever, right?
Sure. Yep, that's an OBI strip.
Okay.
hmm Um, yeah, we included one with the CD as well. Um, but yeah, uh, but when I was thinking of the OBI strip, I was actually not thinking of Japanese releases so much as I was thinking of the band No Devotion.
No.
Okay, so you know Thursday though.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the vocalist of Thursday. It's like a new wave post punk band that he's currently in.
Okay.
And for their first record, they included an OBI strip with the packaging, and I thought it was so fucking cool, to have something like that on a vinyl record, so that you can, you know, pull it out, and if you're unfamiliar with the record, the information, but at the same time, it doesn't interfere with the artwork proper, so that the
Right.
image can stand on its own.
Okay. No, that's kind of sick. I hate it when bands do just like a cover with no like name on it or whatever, and like I could just imagine people in the future being like, "Who the fuck is this?" Like, "Oh, it's that band. I don't know. Let me look it up," and like you can't find it after like 30 minutes or whatever.
hmm Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, that is that's the artwork, and the art booklet, the art for the cassette, it's all done in like a similar manner. you know all of the art occupies a similar wavelength, so again, lots of imagery, not just of like brutalist buildings, but like in the art booklet itself. There are some photos that one of my friends took at this like abandoned train yard in central Jersey. There are some images of our practice space, which is just like a big factory building in New Brunswick. Um, Lots of nocturnal imagery. You get the you get the vibe.
Well, y'all, they didn't just do that too. You did 4 music videos. We're gonna
Yes.
now. I don't think you'll be able to hear it, but everyone else can.
Okay.
So yeah, you want to just tell us a little bit about the idea behind your videos? They all have like kind of like a similar theme. Like,
Yeah. Absolutely. So those actually aren't even the only videos that we've done. Like we have more that haven't been released yet.
oh, okay.
Yeah, and we're working on more stuff but I don't want to talk about it in case it never happens. No, I don't
Mm.
want to talk about it in case it does happen. I want it to be a surprise.
Okay.
Yeah, let me be optimistic about it. Um, I mean, I think at first, like, the idea behind the videos was just that we thought it would be a fun way to express ourselves. Um, we grew up discovering bands through music videos, right? Pre YouTube, like we're all just old enough that we remember a time before YouTube, right? Like catching music videos on like MTV or like Fuse, back when
Right.
Fuse used to play fucking punk rock or whatever. I think my parents had DirecTV for a bit when I was young, and there was this channel called like Havoc TV, and they had a program called Havoc on the 101. And I remember seeing so many interesting music videos on that, like Televators by the Mars Volta, and some dancing videos. I think Happiness and Slavery by Nine Inch Nails, shit like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I think like we all grew up um, really appreciative of like how powerful a music video can be if it's done well, right?
Right.
Um, Not saying that ours are done well, but that's what we were trying to do. So I think for me at least, being the person who edited all the music videos and came up with the concepts for all of them, the idea was to find different ways to touch upon some of the ideas that are present within the songs, and maybe in some instances tease out some of the subtext that, again, because it's subtextual on the record, it doesn't go remarked upon. Maybe, bring some of those subtextual ideas closer to the foreground.
Hmm.
But at the same time, of course, the tricky part is doing all of that on a budget of $0. Uh, so we did our best. Chris and while we were writing the record and recording it and doing all these things, we went around New Jersey for like the better part of half a year, collecting CRT TVs. We have a whole wall in our practice space
That's
of like TVs and PVM monitors, and we
don't need to do like a band photo in front of that. That'd be a cool.
We did.
Oh, you did.
Actually,
Okay.
the back cover of the cassette booklet is like a layout of the four of us in front of the TVs, but it's like
Nice.
four different photos, one for each of us.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually on the TVs are images of us too, that my partner took.
Okay, that's fucking sick. I like that.
Yeah. So again, like even those photos, we couldn't do something simple. We had to go fucking like crazy for them. But I think the idea behind the TVs was like, I don't know, as we were getting into these ideas of like capitalist realism and hauntology and whatnot, I was thinking a lot about like the interrelationship between like technology and memory, right? And how as technology continues to develop and our memories become tied to like obsolete technology specifically, those memories, even more than memory already does,
Just like
I feel like
disappear.
they disappear, and they take on this like very spectral quality. Like for example, I mean, if obviously there's always been technological development, right? But it's so rapid now. If you think back to, I don't know, like I mean, I guess like even well, I guess if you think back to like, I don't know, let's just say 200 years ago, right? Um I don't know. I feel like the if you were to remember something that you were doing as a child, like playing a certain type of game or reading a book or something like that, you could then, as an adult, as an elderly person, essentially replicate that memory, right? Those materials would still be there. But if I were to say, try to replicate a memory of, like, I don't know, playing an NES. I never had an NES, but let's just say I did, for example. Like, you could do it, but it would be a lot of work because those technologies they've run their course. They're obsolete. And as technology continues to evolve, like that'll continue happening.
Well, there's
Um,
also so much more that happens in our lives than happened like 200 years ago or whatever. So it's hard to
mhm,
like keep everything straight too.
exactly. And then, there's also this idea of like, um, as the pace of life quickens, right? And as we continue recognizing just how um, endlessly adaptable capitalism is, and as a result, how inescapable it feels, I feel like um, with that chaos comes like a resultant lack of control or a feeling that like you don't have control.
Mm.
Obviously, as people, we never had control. We never will have control, right? But there was this sense, I think, that a lot of people had that, you know, control was in their grasp. And now I feel like, less and less people feel that way. And as a result, I think, and obviously I'm not a sociologist or anything like that. So like, I'm probably talking out of my ass right now. Um, but I feel like it's natural for people to look backwards as a result, right? And so, especially since now people who are coming of age grew up with the internet and they grew up with like technology that's like at least reminiscent of what we've got now, you have this wave of nostalgia, right?
Right.
So you have companies plan, like the technologies they develop have like a obsolescence built into them, right? And then 15, 20 years later, they can essentially repackage and resell those technologies to people under the guise of nostalgia. Like, hey,
Vinyl
do you remember?
records.
Yeah, vinyl records, or like I'm thinking of like Nintendo reselling Ocarina of Time like 50 different times,
Yeah.
like, hey, remember this game you used to play? Well, now there's the HD remaster. And, there will be another HD remaster at some point. And then, eventually there will be a remake of it. Maybe not of Ocarina of Time, but you know what I mean.
Oh no, that
Like,
that's coming 1,000%. They're gonna do that at
yeah.
some point. Uh,
Hmm. Exactly. I know they did like a 3D or like a 2.5D remake of a Link to the Past not too long ago, right?
right? Yeah. They just
Hmm.
remade a Dead Space, and it's like it's fucking sick as shit.
Yep. Exactly. And this isn't to like pass value judgments on
No,
like
right, right, right.
specific works. I mean, like just before this interview started, I was using an emulator to play the original Fatal Frame. So like,
Okay.
I'm not immune to this. I
Like,
guess
it's
it's
just
just
like how Hollywood has like the third like of a movie series or whatever, fucking Marvel movies and shit. Just like constantly turning out sequels to things or whatever, remaking a
ex-
movie and stuff like that.
exactly. So I don't know. I feel like there was something about reviving these old technologies that appeal to us because like we didn't just use CRT TVs and like PVM monitors. We filmed a lot of stuff on mini DV cameras and whatnot, But for me, at least, the goal wasn't to like be nostalgic. Like, oh, do you remember watching stuff on a CRT TV? You know, um, it was more so about how uh, I don't know. Uh, like, if anything, it's more like it's more of like a criticism of nostalgia. I think this idea of nostalgia is something that haunts you, you know, and something that can ensnare you, right? This um like I don't know. I think like fundamentally conservative mindset that like um the past was always better and whatnot, but at the same time, it's not even meant to be a critique of people who feel nostalgic because we all do. I think for me it was more so meant to comment on the fact that I think capitalism in its current form more or less more or less forces us into a state of nostalgia. It's like nostalgia induced by the machine, you know?
Right. We
Yeah.
we were actually just watching Tape Shift talking. The dance footage, it's found footage, right? Like you found that somewhere. You didn't like
Hmm.
actually film that. Okay, because I was
No,
gonna
oh
say
man.
everybody was just like so old, like it had to have been.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It's all that's all from like rave documentaries from like the 90s and 2000s, like a couple of BBC documentaries all on YouTube, you know. I just downloaded that shit and then just cut it up and
It works
um
really, really well. Like in the beginning, when it's all like kind of sad or whatever, watching everybody just kind of like lose their minds in like a rave setting is really interesting. Like I guess juxtaposition or whatever, and
mhm.
then the actual like dance music kicks in. It's fucking sick. I thought you did really
Yeah. No, thank you. I really
well.
love that was actually the first thing that I ever edited in my life.
Oh
Video
shit.
editing. I had
Okay.
never done any video editing before that, and I did it all on Photoshop.
Okay. I
So
didn't even know you
it
could edit videos on Photoshop. Okay.
neither did I until I started doing this. Uh, during the pandemic, at one point, like my partner, my spouse, caught COVID, so I had to work from home for 2 weeks before I was fired, obviously. And then, like, right when they got better, I got COVID. So for a month,
Nice.
I was home working. And I thought, well, I'm just going to learn Photoshop. And we had already had the idea of making music videos at that point, and we'd actually even started collecting TVs, but we hadn't gotten to filming yet, right? And near the end of that like 4 week crash course in Photoshop, I stumbled upon a video that like it was like a tutorial on video editing. I had the same reaction you did. I was like, "What? Video editing in Photoshop?" Fast forward, a year or so when we started making these videos, I was like, "Well, I already know how to use Photoshop. I don't want to start using some other fucking program, and I didn't have the money to afford another one anyway. So I was like, I'm gonna see how it works. And honestly, once you get used to like the relatively unintuitive setup that Photoshop has for video editing, it becomes pretty smooth. I think like you develop a workflow pretty quickly, and it's not too bad. The only thing is rendering takes forever if you have a lot of layers.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Adobe has like a video editing software and shit.
Oh
Also,
yeah,
if you have like a
Premiere.
subscription or whatever, like
Yeah, Premiere is probably 1,000 times better.
After
But
Effects.
yeah, but I will never know.
No, I gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah, but no, no, you know the shapeshift video of all of that dance footage. Again, it's kind of like what we're talking about before. This tiny idea of like um reviving old technologies, reviving old footage, not to make people feel nostalgic, but to make people feel like the past is unsettled,
Mm.
right? And that contained within the past are ideas that never actually were realized to their fullest extent. But
Okay.
hopefully, people realize that those ideas aren't dead because we still do have access to them. They just need to be revived, but not revived in like again like a nostalgic way, like emo karaoke night or something like that. More like how can we take these ideas and apply them to our current context and move forward from there. Um, and also, that dance footage is in keeping with the function that the electronic part has on the record itself.
Right.
This idea of like your last dance before you go to work, right? Um, it's like um, so burial was a huge influence for that part of the record, right? Like untrue.
I'm not familiar
Uh,
with them.
oh man, okay, burial is an electronic artist from the UK, um, pioneered dubstep, but not what people think of when they think of dubstep here, like Skrillex, womp 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 womp, like type music. It's dubby, like original dub, like very bass driven and whatnot, but it's much more smooth and subdued, and it can be aggressive as well. Burial wasn't the only dubstep artist who was originally doing it, but his music was very much about like his own relationship with rave culture. But the thing is, he wasn't old enough to experience raves when rave culture was actually a big thing in the UK. He had an older sibling, I think an older brother, who would go to raves and then describe them to him. So when he started making music later in life, um, it was his way of almost like mourning this thing that he never even experienced himself.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Huh.
So that part of the record, in addition to being kind of like the theoretical last dance before you go back to work, it's almost like a requiem for the dance as well, you know? And obviously it's not just the dance doesn't have to be literal. You know, it could be anything that substitutes for it, you know. Um so it felt appropriate using footage of ravers past, you know?
Mm. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we are running a little late, but I do have two questions that I have to ask people.
Okay.
I forgot to inform you before we started, but so I'm just asking you on the spot here. Off the top of your head, what's the best show you've played?
That I played?
Yeah,
Shit.
as
Uh,
Massa Nera.
oh fuck. That's hard. Man, we've played like 150 plus shows now, which isn't like that much for
I
most
thought it was
bands.
gonna be more actually.
Damn, yeah, well, we've been really busy lately,
Yeah.
but um, man, that's really hard. Well, um, the oh, fuck, we've played so many good shows. Honestly, we're really lucky.
Well, how
Um,
about this one? What's the worst show you've played?
the worst show we played. Oh man. Okay, so for I'll do both. For best show, um, three-way tie. Last show we played when we were in Japan back in 2019. Um, fucking incredible. Um,
How'd you get out to Japan?
well, initially we were just going to be in Southeast Asia. We had friends online who we had hit up in the Philippines to start making it happen. And then
That's sick.
we decided we wanted to do a week in Southeast Asia and a week in Japan. We knew and still know the band Sans Visage. They're like a Japanese screamo band, fucking incredible. And their drummer, Ko, is like a really important figure out in Japan and like specifically like Tokyo in terms of like their just like DIY culture in general. So once we got in contact with him, and he was familiar with our music as well, thank goodness. We you know, he helped us book the shows and everything.
So you're just like, hey, I just want to go to Southeast Asia or whatever. Like you're not you don't like. Did you know them beforehand? Did they come to the U.S. and you hooked up with them there, or like
No, we had never met any of the folks that we uh
just on a
played
whim? You're
with.
just like, oh, we want to go over to Asia.
Yeah, yeah, we you know, it was actually
That's crazy.
it was actually our first tour ever that was longer than 5 days too.
That's insane. Why would you do
Uh-huh.
that? That's
Uh-huh.
crazy.
Yeah, my it was the first time I'd ever even been on a plane, and I went to Malaysia. That was
I
my
mean, it's
first plane
fucking
ride.
sick. Don't get me wrong. It's just like I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe going like around Texas or something might be more
yeah. Well,
beneficial
that's
to like
the
the early part of early
but
history.
that's the Massa Nera way, you know. Like you know, we have to like we can't ever do anything simple. We have like we used to have insanely bad luck too, and like our bad luck I feel like was worse than other bands' bad luck. You know, like flat tires and like shit just going all wrong and everything. But like that's just it's just part of the being in this band. But no, I mean yeah, so that's how it happened. And yeah, I think our idea was like, you know, we were thinking like, okay, let's finally do a 2 week tour. What can we do? And we were thinking, oh, 2 weeks in the US, maybe we go to Europe. And then Chris, I think it was, he was like, why don't we try to do something that like most people don't do? And that was the idea we landed on. And it was funny because AJ wasn't in the band yet when we decided upon it. So when she joined the band, I think I was like, "Oh, you know, you joined at a good time actually because we're going to be pretty busy. Like, how do you feel about going to Asia next year?" And she was like, "Okay."
That's crazy. Was it
Yeah.
like successful, or did y'all end up losing like a lot of money, or how
Uh,
did it go in general?
Oh, I mean, we definitely lost money, but that's because we didn't know shit at the time. Like
Right.
you know, we if we had done it now, we would have we definitely would have made money, you know,
Okay.
because we know what we're doing now, at least a little bit more. But at the time it was so fucking chaotic and disorganized and everything, and we the band was so much less put together as like an entity in and of itself.
Right.
That we definitely lost money. The band made money because we paid for everything ourselves personally. So whatever money we made went back into the band. So the band did well, but us as individuals, we did very poorly financially. But
That's hilarious.
it was worth it
I mean,
because
it's a crazy experience. Yeah, like that's the type
it
of thing
was
you tell
a
your kids, right?
probably the best 2 weeks of my life. Pound for pound. Yeah. So the last show we played in Tokyo, then November 2021, we went to Canada to play with Respire for their Blackline record release weekend.
God damn.
Um, it was like the we've been in Canada so many fucking times. We're like more of a Canadian band than we are a New Jersey band, you know. And the show we played in Toronto, the second day of that weekend, that might have been the best set we've ever played. Like it just was such a good fucking night, and we were so like I don't know, like we were just firing on all cylinders. There were a shitload of people there, mostly to see Respire, obviously not us, but like um, yeah, it was a great night. We played an
That's sick.
encore, even though we weren't the headlining band.
Damn.
Uh,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So some amount of
Um,
them are probably there for you then.
Yeah, at least a few people. And then the show that we played with Stacia and Soul Glow back in November at the Unitarian Church in
That's
Philadelphia.
that's
That was
nice.
fucking incredible. Watching Stacia, like even if we had played a terrible set, that might be on the list just because we got to play with Stacia. It was so fucking surreal.
That's
But
crazy.
we also I think we played a really, really fucking killer set, which we needed to do because we were playing first. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to get fucking blown away by these two bands. And then, um, we go on stage and I was thinking, oh, well, even if we get blown away, it won't matter because no one's going to come early for us. And then like the place was already packed. So I was like, oh my fucking God, we've got to do it. And we did it. And,
That's sick.
it was great. And then Soul Glow killed it, and Alan played with Soul Glow, so it was a joy for me personally, just watching him play with Soul Glow. And then Seisha was like, "Oh my God!" The room was so filled with joy when they played. Like it was so heartwarming and life affirming. Yeah, incredible. So I would say those are the three best shows. But that's like there's a lot of competition. We've played many, many more great shows than we have bad shows.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Worst show, on the other hand, let me
Let's hear
think.
it. You said you had a lot
Uh,
of bad luck. I'm looking forward to it.
well,
It's a good
we've
story.
had a lot of bad luck, but usually it's on the way to the show or coming back from a show or like,
Hey,
you
those count
know.
too. Those count too. You can mention those.
Okay, okay. Then I'll give two answers. One for a show we actually played, and one for a show that we didn't even make it to.
Nice.
Um, so as far as the show that we did play, um, man, um, well, as far as the show we played recently, we played Pittsburgh back in June, and I think we only played to like a couple bands dropped, so it was just us and one other band,
Mm.
and we only played to that other band,
That
and then we
sucks.
slept in a house that had like cat puke on the floor.
Oh Jesus
Um,
Christ! No, I've been in that situation before. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
yeah,
shit
and
sucks.
like in case the person who hosted us is watching, like
Like, dude,
thank
clean
you
that
for
fucking
hosting
cat
us,
cat
but
vomit
yeah,
up. Like Jesus.
yeah, that was pretty rough. You know what actually made it worse too? Um, we okay, like admittedly, I'm gonna say like I think we're a really really good live band. Like I think we're like extremely tight and we're consistent. Like that's why we were able to
That's the
record
comments
the.
I've been hearing. Actually, is that y'all are like really, really good live.
Thank you. Oh, that's really thank goodness I'm not just deluded. Um, And that show, we played such a fucking killer set. And I was like, man, why are we even going this hard? We're playing to five people. But I mean, obviously, that's what you do,
Right,
when you're
right.
in punk rock. You play the same way no matter who's there, even if it was an empty room. But it was a little bit deflating. Like, wow, we're killing it right now, and nobody is here to see it. Um,
Like five guys
because
out there. Dude looks up from his for a second. Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, the people who were there, they were really lovely and they were stoked, so
No,
that was
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
But I guess it was deflating at the time because in the back of my head I was like, what if the rest of the shows suck? Like, what if we perform terribly? And this is our best night on tour, you
Right,
know?
using all the good performance.
I mean, that wasn't the case, but like, um, that being said, back in the day, before we had our current lineup, um, before we started doing vocals, like back in like the original iteration of the band, we were not good live. I actually
Oh
think
no.
that's why we're so good now. It's because we know how we used to be, and are afraid of ever returning to that again. So like we practice relentlessly,
When you
to
say you
make
were
sure.
bad, what do you mean? Like you just like fucked up parts a lot, or like the energy
Oh,
wasn't there? Or...
I mean, like the energy, it was there, but like it wasn't even a fraction of what it is now.
Mm.
Probably because I mean, now we're all doing vocals, and there's this like interplay, and we've been playing together for so long, and we just wrote a record that we fucking love. Back then, like we weren't as well seasoned live. We were still kind of like, we weren't as confident as performers, both on a band level and individually. Um, Chris Allen and I um, weren't doing vocals. We hadn't written the lyrics, so like that energy wasn't there. AJ wasn't in the band. We had a different bassist who was a nice person, but like not a good musician, honestly. So like that definitely detracted from things. Um, yeah, I mean, we'd fuck up. We'd forget things. You know, I don't know. I remember a lot of performances during that era that felt pretty bad, but
Mm.
one stands out. It was the show that I booked. Actually, it was the first show I'd ever booked, and I was so stoked. And I really needed it at the time because my life was in shambles. So 3 days before the show was supposed to take place, I found out that the venue that I had been told was good to go was actually under construction and wouldn't be done until like 3 months after.
What the fuck?
Yeah, yeah. So at the last minute, we found an alternate venue, Jimmy D's Blues Saloon.
Okay. Okay. I
And
like it. I like the
there was
name.
like we played in this like pool room. There was a fucking motorcycle in a glass case on the wall.
Okay.
Um,
This is the spot for screamo, right? Like, come
mhm.
on. It just
Oh yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like I'm surprised you can't find video of like fucking Page 99 playing there back in the day, you know? And it was snowy. Um, but all of those things can make a show amazing if everything comes together, right? But unfortunately, while we were playing what was at the time my favorite song that we had, I think all of our favorite song, we got to the climax of it, and our old bassist played the entirety of the climax in a completely different key,
Oh no.
and it just sounded like such dog shit. And he didn't stop; he just kept playing. And then afterwards, he was like, "Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened." And the rest of the performance just went downhill from there. Yeah,
That
it
sucks.
was not really bad in a funny way, just bad in like a real like in a real way, just like painfully bad. Um, yeah, and we all knew his time in the band was limited after that.
Mm.
So, um, that being said, I have a much more entertaining story about a show we didn't make. Um, do you know the band Zeta?
That sounds so familiar, but I don't think I've ever
Ah,
listened to him.
fucking incredible. They're from Venezuela. They're in Miami now. They've been around for like 20 years. It's like hardcore punk meets screamo meets prog meets psychedelia meets like just all of these different types of like Venezuelan music. They all play percussion at different points live. They this like incredible energy. It's just they're really a one of a kind band. They make music like no one else. Um, and I really say that without hyperbole. It's just the truth. Um, and they're also lovely people, right? And they mean a lot to like different people in the band, and so um, back in 2018, we were going to play with them in Philadelphia for the first time ever. And we were fucking excited. So fucking stoked. And at the time, we had a van, right? This 15 passenger thing. It used to be a prison van. We bought it off a prop master in upstate New York. She was filming a movie about a reformed white supremacist, but needed to fly back to Wisconsin after filming was done. So we drove up to her and bought the van for $2,000. And it only had like 55,000 miles on it.
That's pretty
So we
good.
thought, yeah, but shortly thereafter, we came to learn why the van was only $2,000.
Right.
So we're driving to Philly, and the van just stops running. So Alan, who was driving, manages to pull it over onto the shoulder without fucking crashing into the whatever, like the wall, right?
Right.
Because again, like he couldn't steer at all. He just had to like slowly guide it to the shoulder. So we started trying to find anyone who could tell us, but no one will send a truck out. I think I spent 3 hours calling people, right? Finally, I get a hold of someone who's going to come out. We wait like 30 more minutes. By this point, the show's fucking over. We've missed it handedly, and we
That
just want to get home,
sucks.
right? It was August 2018. It was fucking hot as shit. We also had a tour coming up 4 days later
Nice.
with my other band and Alan's other band. It was going to be which I was also in. So I was going to do 3 sets a night, and
God damn.
yeah, and we needed this van. So we were like, oh my God, like, how are we going to do this tour? How are we going to get back home? We're sweating our asses off. Finally, at like, I don't know, 12:30 or whatever, tow truck driver pulls up in front of us, comes to the van. First thing he says is, oh man, they didn't tell me there were going to be 4 of you. I don't have room in my truck for all of you. So we're like, okay, whatever, man, no worries. He, tows us to this gas station, I guess, so that we could develop a game plan. We got out of the van. He looks at us and says, I've been working for 24 hours straight. I'm smoking cigarettes to stay awake. I should probably stop smoking because I had a heart attack recently. But my mom, she's had 8 heart attacks and she still smokes. So I think I know something about heart attacks. And we're just like, what the fuck?
Yo, you should put that in a song. That is like those would be great lyrics. Oh my God.
Right? Oh my God. Yeah, yeah. It was fucking. And then Alan and Chris took like a lift back to Linden, New Jersey. So it was an expensive ass lift, right? But AJ and I had the privilege of going back to New Jersey with this dude. And while we're in the truck with him, he starts talking about like this relationship he was in with this woman who lived in Arizona. She was the daughter of like a NASA scientist or something like that.
Okay.
And then she calls, like video calls, and he's like, "Oh, let me take this." And they start video calling, and then they basically start having phone sex.
Alrighty.
Yeah. And so that was it's probably the worst show that I ever didn't play. Yeah. Hmm. What was the you said there was another question that you ask everyone.
Oh, it was those two. Well, before we close it out, I do ask your album of the year. So be thinking that while I'm plugging your merch real quick. You guys on your Bandcamp, you've got vinyl, cassettes, there's CDs, shirts, tote bags, you even got a beer cozy at
Yes.
massanera.bandcamp.com/merch. So yeah, album of the year for last year, just real quick.
Oh, fuck.
I should have told you all this shit before we started. I completely forgot. Yeah, this is
No.
my second show back after taking off for like 2 months, so still trying to get things together.
Oh, no worries. Oh my God. Well, first it's like I have to remember like what came out last year. I'm so bad when it comes to keeping up with music, you know what I mean? Especially heavy music. Like while we were writing the record, I pretty much just listened to ambient music and like electronic music. I didn't listen to anything heavy at all because I didn't want it to like unconsciously influence me, you
Right.
know? But even on top of that, I'm just really bad at keeping up with shit. So, with that being said, given that unlike some of the people on Rate Your Music who have apparently listened to like fucking 400 new records a year or whatever, I probably only listen to maybe like 15. Um,
Right, those people are crazy. I know a couple of them. It's
yeah,
insane. I was
you
just
know
shocked.
how do you even digest the record though? You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
yeah, because like I don't know, for me, like a good record, like I want to listen to it multiple times and dig into it. Like, can you really do that if you're listening to that much new music? You know, like
Well,
where do you even have the time? I don't know. Anyway,
right.
whatever, whatever. Hey, more power to you though, because like I wish I had time to listen to all that fucking music.
Yeah.
Um, God, maybe The Loser by Gospel.
Hey, that's a good one. I like
Yeah.
that one. Okay. Okay.
I thought that was a
God, they're fucking
fucking
sick. They're so good. I had
yeah.
it was one of them. I don't remember their name, but I had one of the members on here. It was fucking sick. They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah, they're fucking incredible. And honestly, that record to me, it's like it really feels like, you know, if you had played that record for me and I didn't know who the band was, and you had told me, you know, that's the first record they've made in 17 years, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here, you know? It sounds so vital, so alive, and it sounds like it's like a clear progression from what they were doing, you know? And it just so happens that what they were doing was like uh, something no one else is doing, you know? And like in the 17 years since The Moon is a Dead World came out, no one has taken up that mantle. So it's like they were gone for 17 years and they went right back to doing something that no one else on earth was doing. And they fucking so, God damn it. Yeah. I was wondering when something like this would happen. So yeah. Um, maybe fucking The Loser or man, I don't know, Mystic Sisters by City of Caterpillar. I really loved that record. You know, I really dug how it was more like post punky and noisy than their old shit. You know, like I didn't think that they just like um it wasn't just like their self titled part two. You know, um. But yeah, no, I don't know. I feel like I have to give the edge to The Loser, or you know what? Diaspora Problems by Soul Glow.
Oh, you know what? That's one I need to dive into more. I've heard a couple songs, but I need to like listen to the full.
Yeah, it's just fucking killer. Um, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I would really recommend. I mean, I guess if people are watching this podcast because like we're on it or I'm on it, you know, then they probably have already listened to the entirety of Soul Glow's discography. But if someone hasn't, I would highly recommend diving into their back catalog because at least for me, um, their older shit is just as worthy of a listen. But their new record is like fucking incredible, and they continue to um, become more and more their own band. You know,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, it's just killer, and it sounds like no one else. And you know, there are a lot of. I mean, they blew up, and they're blowing up, and no band deserves it more. You know, because they're so fucking talented and so creative and so uncompromising, and they have shit to say. You know, there are a lot of fucking punk bands that I will not name that have blown up even more that don't deserve it a fraction as much as Soul Glow does. You know, uh, Soul Glow is making music that looks forward. A lot of other bands are just fucking glorified nostalgia acts. So yeah, Soul Glow, Gospel, those would be my off the cuff like two album of the year picks for last year.
Hell yeah. Before we head on out into the intro, do you have any tours coming up or anything you wanted to plug?
Um, yeah, let's see. I have a shitload of stuff that hasn't been announced yet, so
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it a secret for now.
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, we've got two bigger tours that we haven't announced. So stuff that I can talk about. Well, we're going to Quebec next month.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Um, yeah, we're gonna be in Quebec City and Montreal, and then we're gonna hit Albany on the way back down. Um, I could have easily told a story about trying to play in Quebec City in February as another like worst show ever.
That sounds
Uh,
awful. What the fuck? There'd be so much snow.
well, you know what there was a foot of it, in fact. It was negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit. And we woke up and our friends were like, uh, yeah, the show's not happening. And we were like, well, yeah, I guess it's not. What do you want to do then? And they were like, what do you mean? What do you want to do? We're all going to work. And they just went to work and we were stranded in their fucking house as the snow just piled up. Oh, man. And then, we had to drive home because I actually had a date the next day with my current, with my, with my spouse, but it was our first date,
Nice.
So my bandmates were like, oh, I guess we should just like sleep in then. And I was like, no, we can't. We have to drive home. I need to go on this date. So we just drove home in the middle of the night. It normally from Montreal to New Jersey it would be like a 6 hour drive. But because of the weather, it was like a 10-hour drive. I think I got home at 7 in the morning and I woke up at like 12 noon for this date.
Aw. And
Yeah.
you telling this story around Valentine's Day too.
Oh, it is Valentine's Day. Shows how
It's
romantic we are. I don't even remember. Um, but yeah, we're going to Quebec City and Montreal. And then in October, we're going to be in Ontario. So we're going to do Kitchener, Waterloo, Toronto, and Hamilton.
okay.
Um, and then from there, we've got we just got added to like 7 shows, including, the shows that we were talking about earlier before we started recording. Um, just a bunch of local shit like Jersey, New York. Um, yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
like I said, 2 bigger tours, including a 3 week long tour that
Nice.
is,
So you're going back to
goes
Asia then you're saying.
yeah. This time we're gonna do more countries too.
Yeah.
We last time we did Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Japan. This time we're gonna add Cambodia, we're gonna add Thailand, we're gonna add uh South Korea. We're gonna add no, I'm kidding. We're
No, you had me for a second there. I was like, wait, is he memeing or is he being serious?
yeah, no, no. It's it's gonna be it's domestic. Yeah. Um, but we are gonna do I'm hoping. Um, I don't want to say next year. I don't want to say a date, but like we do have some international tours planned.
Oh yeah.
Not for this calendar year, but for the future.
Nice.
So yeah.
That's what's
Uh,
up. Is there anything else you want to say before we head out to the outro?
shit. Fuck. I guess like thank you for having me. To anyone who like has spent however long we've been doing this listening to me fucking ramble incessantly about all of this arcane shit. Uh thank you for like even just taking the time to listen to us at all, let alone um digging into what we're doing. We uh we're I we really take our music seriously, you know. We're really trying to make like art. Hopefully not in like a precocious or like pretentious way or whatever, like it's not we're not trying to be precious about it, but we really are trying to um make something that to us at least feels artful and intentional and meaningful and challenging. And the fact that anyone has even given it any time at all, let alone um, listen to it, listen to the new record front to back or seen us live or whatever. Like it's crazy. I still can't wrap my mind around it. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah. We should also shout out to the Davids real quick. Zegman Beach helping you know, put out that.
Yeah, yeah. No, seriously, they are amazing. And like the record wouldn't have been possible without them. They fucking I don't know how they dealt with us because we just like we like we were so crazy like I said. um I would send them messages like, hey, we went on Duplication's website, and these are the specific cassette cases that we want. Like, we want these colors, we want these color cassettes. We looked at all of them, and these are the ones we chose. We want this much of this much of this. Like, we were so ridiculously specific. Maybe that's how all bands are, but I'm kind of assuming, based on how we used to be, that, like, a lot of people, they probably are going to be like, yeah, let's put it on cassette and whatever you think looks nice. But we
No, I
wanted,
think that like that's something that labels like is like a band that has a vision or whatever, you know.
yeah, and we wanted even the cassette cases. We wanted to make sure that all of the colors were in line with like the mood of the record, the color scheme of the record.
Right.
So, I mean, like, they went along with everything that we threw at them. They dealt with my fucking relentless insanity. They dealt with the whole art book saga. At one point they were even like, yeah, because the record is 50 minutes long, right? Side A is 26 minutes. Um, and it's all on a single LP,
Right.
miraculously, thanks to Carl Saff cutting the lacquers like a fucking magician. If At one point they were like, uh, this is going to be long. Maybe we should cut a song. And we were like, no, we can't cut a song because the songs all flow into each other. Like, there's no way to cut anything. And even if they didn't flow into each other, we were like, if we cut a song, it's not the same record. They're all crucial. It's like a novel, not like a collection of short stories.
Right.
So, I guess even in a good collection of short stories, you can't cut one. But like in a novel, you definitely can't cut a chapter. So they were like, well, maybe the record just has to be a double LP then. Like, the fact that they even said that, just shows how fucking generous and um how genuine they really are. It's all about the music for them. And fortunately we were like, no, we can't afford a double LP. Like, we'll make it work on a single LP. Um but again, like, the fact that they even floated that idea out was mind-boggling to me. So yeah, I can't say anything. I can't say enough good things about them. And if anyone is starting like a screamo or hardcore or just like a weird DIY band in general, right? It doesn't even have to be screamo or hardcore, and you want to get into the world of physical releases, but you don't know where to start. I would recommend sending your music to ZBR, 100%. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
just yeah, and they're the ones who told me about this podcast actually too.
Oh nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was Canada Dave, Dave Norman who told me specifically.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's sick. I've had him on here before.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, he's the best. Fucking actually, we pretty much owe. I really think we owe everything to him. Like, before we played the first Zegama Beach Records Festival back in 2017, we had never even played outside of New Jersey, let alone outside of the country. And like, we'd released a couple EPs, but like, I don't think anyone really knew who we were, even within like the ultra niche world of fucking screamo, of like real screamo. And I have no fucking idea why Dave invited us to play this festival. But he did, and that was the first time we ever performed with Chris, me, and Alan doing vocals. You know, it was I don't know, it was the first time we'd ever played to like just like with all of these other amazing bands. Like, it really was in a lot of ways like our proper introduction into this world. And after that, I feel like we got so much momentum, and in some ways, I feel like that initial burst of momentum is what we're still like riding on. Like, we've just found ways of prolonging it. So it really is all thanks to him. And he invited us to play ZBR2. You know, we played with Joliet and Malevich and bands like that. We played last year's ZBR Fest. We're gonna play this one coming up. Like,
This one looks
and I hope
stupid too.
It is going to be stupid. And I hope we play all of them. I mean, at this point, we're the only band that's played all of them. So I hope that continues. I'm trying to convince them to make us like the house band, you know? Um, but yeah, it's all due to just like Dave Norman's generosity and Dave Collins' generosity as well. Now that CBR is a two-man operation, so yeah, endless thanks to them.
Hell yeah. So Massa Nera is a band that's changing the game when it comes to screaming. You need to check out their new album. You want to give us a title one more time?
Oh my God, changing the game. Well, I don't know. Don't I didn't say it.
Bro, you added
Uh,
EDM fucking screaming. Get the fuck out of here. Changing the game.
yeah, I do hope that in the future, the electronic parts can be integrated into the songs themselves, like a little bit
That'd
more
be fucking
seamlessly too.
fire. That'd be
Yeah,
fire.
that's something that we're talking about a lot, like weaving those elements into the fabric of the song, rather than having it as like something that's part of the song, but also exists like on its own.
Right, a little break or whatever.
Exactly. Even though, like, there have been people who have called it an interlude, and it is not an interlude. It's 5 minutes long. That is not an interlude. That's way too long to be an interlude. It's 5/6 of the technically. That's 1/10 of the entire record. That's not an interlude. But yeah. In the future, I really hope we could weave everything together. But yeah, the record is Deramad Querer Borrar,
Alrighty.
which translates to spill, to want, to erase.
And that came out back in December through Zegama Beach Records. I'm gonna give you a chance to shout out whatever social media stuff, whatever links or whatever you got. So if there's anything you want to shout out.
Sure. Yeah, we've begrudgingly, we've got Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Instagram is what we use the most because Facebook is kind of dead, and Twitter is, I don't know.
Well, do you have
I'm at
like
this.
a big cartel or anything like that? Any place where people can get other kinds of merch from you?
Um,
Or
we have our Bandcamp. We have our Bandcamp page, and that's where we keep everything right now.
okay.
Maybe in the future we'll make a like a web store, but right now Bandcamp. And you know what? If anything, I would recommend people check out our YouTube channel actually, because that's where
There you
all the
go.
music videos are. And yeah.
Alrighty. Um, As for me, drop my channel follow so you always know when I go live. You can also sub to get access to interviews before they hit YouTube and streaming platforms, as well as get some exclusive emotes. You can also do that for free by attaching Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. YouTube, folks, if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, click the notification bell. Don't forget to subscribe. It's a great way to support me for free. Check out my music, The Sound That Ends Creation, at soundthatenscreation.bandcamp.com. Again, we got some tour leftovers from the last couple tours I was on. Probably taking them down in like a week or so. We'll see what's up. My next guest will be See You Next Tuesday, who's dropping their new record, Distractions, this Friday, actually. So join us this Sunday, the 19th at 7 p.m. Central for the live cast. Thanks for
Holy
being here,
shit, that
Mark.
band is still around.
Hell yeah, they're putting out a new record. First one in, I don't know how many years, but it's been a long fucking time. It's been at least over a decade, I think.
Wow.
So they'll be on the cast next. But yeah, thanks for being here, Mark. Hope you had a good time.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thank you for having me. Seriously.
Hell yeah, and thank you guys for watching and listening.
The life that is threatened by our design. We